Welcome, guys, to the In-Game Boss channel, and welcome to our show, Past Attractions. I am your director, Nam, and my co-director is hanging out over there, and that's the In-Game Boss himself. He allows me to actually do this.
Yes. Yes, in some shape or form, yes.
All right, today we'll be talking about an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. The Arnold Schwarzenegger movie I decided to choose is not an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. I have chosen Conan the Barbarian. Conan the Barbarian, my bad. Conan the Barbarian, the 1982 movie, and I chose this movie mostly because, as you can assume, us in the world, Jeremy, myself, and Jerome have been playing a little bit of Baldur's Gate 3. And it gave me the inspiration wanting to go back to check out this movie. Jeremy, I don't think I've ever seen this movie.
I'm on the same boat with you. I always seen the cover because the cover, the poster, whatever, the DVD it's iconic. It's iconic as hell. And every time I look, I forget Arnold Schwarzenegger's on the cover of it, but it never interests me at all. I just never cared about seeing this movie ever until you put it in this pick. I just never been interested in it. But now that you picked it, it is a very interesting thing to talk about for this because I think this is the only movie I would say that Arnold played based on like a comic or just a famous icon character in that world of like comics and stuff. If I'm wrong, please leave a comment down below.
I mean, he is wrong, but we're not going to talk about the Batman and the Batman Forever or Batman and Robin movie.
Sorry, maybe I mean starring role.
We're not going to talk about Batman Forever, right? It is Forever, right? I don't know. It's so bad I forgot.
No, and we'll forever forget about that. Anyways, move on.
Exactly. It was actually kind of funny because like what I got this movie when I chose this movie, I had thought it was something else, but I think what happened was for me, I got like Conan the Barbarian, Conan the Destroyer, and Red Sonja, which is like all of it within the series just kind of meshed together. And so when I watched this movie, I was just like, I don't think I've seen this. But I mean, even with that being the case, I mean, for me, you know, even without watching this movie particularly, I kind of grew up watching like He-Man, the Masters of the Universe. I just don't remember the movie all that well. And a part of me kind of wants to go back and watch it, but you know, I chose Arnold in this one, so I was like, we had to stick with it. But I mean, I was a big fan of like He-Man, the Masters of the Universe. I actually had the toys. Thundercats would be something very similar to that too.
I think one of the key difference too, compared to what you're saying, is while those shows you mentioned were very super fantasy, especially He-Man being very a little bit of sci-fi in there, Conan is very would you say, more grounded with more of the Viking kind of like setting per se. You know what I mean? Like a little bit of that, a little bit of like what is his name? Whatever. Like I was trying to think of the famous Asian conqueror, Genghis Khan. Like kind of that like era kind of mold together. Sure, it has a little bit of sorcery in this movie, but not as loud as you say like He-Man or Thundercats.
Yeah. I mean, it would be kind of an interesting thought, right? Because I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you. Because you would think that it was more grounded, but then again, I'm not as familiar with the comic books. And like you mentioned prior to our conversation, I actually didn't realize that there was a comic book series about this particular series. I just, you know, big man slapping man meat, just beating people up. Like I was all game for it. You know, I was a big, huge wrestling fan. So, I mean, there's always those big, bulky, like super wrestlers that I used to watch back in the day, like the Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan. So, like, Conan the Barbarian was just kind of like fit that mold, like bigger than life. And, you know, he just had big muscles and he just fought people with swords. I thought that was pretty cool. Much like He-Man, the Thundercats, or, you know, later on, you know, Hercules, the TV show, the movies, everything else that you can possibly know. Xena, exactly. And even the Beastmaster series.
Right.
Which, you know, kind of like that realm. And I get what you're saying, because this one does feel a lot more grounded, minus like the sorcery, which is very little compared to like, you know, the Thundercats, and or where you like there's so much fantasy to it, or He-Man, where like there's a lot of fantasy to that too as well. So I do agree with that. It does feel a little bit more grounded. But then again, you know, who knows? We could read the comic books and just be like, oh, well, no, that's not even at all
now,
as much fantasy.
Correct me if I'm wrong here. For a movie, I believe this is a rated R film. I didn't pay too much attention. Were you surprised though of the violence of this film going into this?
No, I kind of
Okay.
anticipated. I did kind of anticipate it. It was interesting to see 1982 violence.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the biggest thing. Was really interesting about seeing the 1982 violence. But Jeremy, were you into like those cartoons, those TV shows that I have mentioned to you prior?
Yeah, Thundercats. I knew a little bit about. He-Man. I never got really into He-Man. I was never really into a lot of the shirtless heroes. I was more of the more weirder stuff like Team Ninja Turtles. We mentioned Thundercats, SWAT Cats. All like a lot of cats. I realize now. A lot of the strange ones compared to of just the muscle-bound, brainless action of all those. I think we could definitely say like Batman definitely took a lot away from those kind of heroes, because I would say like in the 90s you didn't see more of those characters. They were very early 80s of these shirtless heroes.
All right, man. Let's go ahead and get into the movie, man. So, very first start of this movie, the very first act of this movie, the whole reasoning for this movie to even happen, right? There was a scene, and it was pretty early. I mean, it's basically the scene that sets it all up. Jeremy, I have a question for you.
Okay.
In this scene, to preface, and before I explain the scene, did you look into his eyes? You looked into his eyes, didn't you? So what we're talking about is Thulsa Doom, naturally. Thulsa Doom kills Conan's mother. She stared into his eyes, and didn't turn out very well for her. I need you to show a picture of Thulsa Doom to your dad and ask him, all right, so I don't know if I've ever told you this, and it's not. I swear it's not a token black thing. I always felt that every time, like, I see your dad or I think about your dad, I always think of James Earl Jones.
You're not wrong. A lot of people get, and it's at the time. Now it's different, but my dad got a lot of comparison to Bill Cosby too back in that time.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but still, I think, is it the tone? Would you say got the Earl Jones? The tone?
Yeah, I think it's the tone and just kind of like the narrator, like stories and stuff like that he goes through. You have to show him a picture of Tulsa Doom and just be like, "So, Dad, did you do this?"
That's funny.
So, man, what'd you think about the scene?
I thought that was very interesting because, like, I guess we were talking about prior to the recording of like what is the first magic that we witnesses in this movie, and I guess now I think about it, I think it is that, right? He has some ability to kind of like hypnotize you, to get you to stop doing once he just looks at you and he reaches his hand out, right? Like the moment that happens, you just fall into it. And I think when I first recorded, when I first watched it, I didn't put that together. I was just kind of just wondering like how she was going to die. And then she got beheaded very, very quickly, which is funny because like a movie rated R in the 80s, it was kind of crazy of where stuff is allowed to show and not show. Like you just saw the head rolling. You didn't physically see the action of the head of the slicing of the head. So that was very interesting. But him coming in, I will say that even Earl, I think Earl Jones in any movie, if he comes in walking in, he just has that presence. I mean, hell, he had a presence when he was Mufasa in The Lion King. You just felt the Earl Jones coming out of the lion when he walked into that scene. Earl Jones has a presence, and it's a good presence. So when you come in, it's one of those like be quiet and hear what he has to say kind of moments. So like I thought I think the beginning leading up to her death was pretty cool. I like how they set that up. So Doom had a good presence when he first came in.
I agree. I do think the intro for Doom just in general worked out really well. It was kind of interesting because you mentioned the whole charm thing. It's like I thought it was just the long flowing black hair and the big blue eyes, because I won't be honest with you. But yeah, that was interesting because I don't think there was another movie where James Earl Jones was like really the bad guy. I mean, he was Vader, but he was never really like
physically, right?
Yeah.
Physically as a villain. You're right. This is the first one we have ever seen Earl Jones ever become a villain. Yes.
Yeah. So when he came in, and of course it makes sense because he has the presence, which may be a common theme that we talk about later throughout this entire show. But he didn't even have to say anything. He just showed up. He was like, charm. Then he looked at the girl and was like, you hold the sword better than the kid in Narnia. And instead of just, turning into Wayne Brady and like choking her.
When he came in with removing the helmet, did not know that it was him in that helmet. That blew my mind for a little bit. I'm like, Earl Jones? Because I don't think Earl Jones was going to be like a good guy. Some down the line, he was going to be like, or some kind of wise old man that will tell him where to go to his next adventure or something. Maybe he could have been the wizard. Something. Did not know he was going to come out of that outfit, that helmet, and just thrust his moves. totally threw me off.
I hate to say, like I was saying earlier, it kind of feels like a pimp in a way, right? Because he's looking at he's looking at his hoe. He's got the long, like black hair. He's like very flamboyant, and then he instead of backhanding her, which I mean he did basically do, he backhanded her, but with the sword and took her head off. But the funny thing about it is, like, nowadays we would look at that and call that PG or PG-13 and not rated R, because it wasn't the actual act. We know it's the act of cutting the head off and the head fell down, but that's not like a rated R thing for us in 2023.
Right.
Because in 2023 you would see it happen. But that I think that was definitely interesting.
But it definitely left a mark of this is who Doom is, at least for that intro, right? Like, okay, he ain't playing, and then followed by taking the kid in as a slave.
Yeah.
And going further from there. And let's talk about that, because when it comes to movies in general, sometimes I don't know if I get irritated of when certain movies do the time jumps. Sometimes they'll just throw a number out like, hey, 4 years later, 5 years later. This movie is particularly one of the few films that do the whole, how do we show jumping time without telling you? And I asked you this, Nam. Maybe you're indifferent, but I wonder, like, do you like movies that like to tell time through their actions, or do you just like someone to just splat it out to you? Here it is, time passed. Because when the kid ended up being a slave, he kept doing the same thing over and over again. He ended up working for, I guess, this, like, I don't know what the hell they were out at. No, I'm going to be totally blunt with you. I didn't know where they're at. All I knew, they were doing the traditional slave thing where they're turning something around and circle over and over again.
They just like wheels.
Yeah, I don't know. They were going for water or whatever. I don't know. But as he kept going around in a circle, we start slowly to see him age. And funny, clever way to keep his head down so we don't see, like, the actor changing every time. But I like that transition of showing of this, like, him getting older, of him turning toward. I thought that was a clever way of doing that. And I like films that do that. They show different ways of showing time pass instead of just saying 5 years later.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you there. I think when you can get creative about how you want to do stuff like that, I think in this movie, and obviously it's probably more budget than it is anything else, right? And taking ourselves back to 1982, it was a good effort, but I do feel that it would have been nice to see him do other things than turning a wheel.
I agree.
I mean, because he ends up, like, training to be like this warrior, but you don't really know how he got as big as he got, as buff as he got, because I mean, technically speaking, then if they all got as big and strong as Arnold Schwarzenegger, would they not all just rebel?
And that's why it was strange as time passed. They never identified all the other kid slaves that were among him pursuing that thing. He ended up being by himself. Like, well, what happened to the kids? And this is going to be something we'll be talking about throughout the film. Some of these, let's just leave it unanswered kind of situations. So, but yeah, I question that. Like, I agree. I think that's why they made the decision of somehow maybe you'll figure out on your own. Yeah, they died. They didn't make it. But this guy, Conan, he did. He made it through. That's why he's strong, which I argue your legs would probably be the strongest. So, you could do a lot of dive kicks to people. I don't know how you got the muscle.
Really needed to do is just go around, start doing a dick kick party. Just going around kicking everybody in the nuts. Just,
right.
I don't know you. That's my puss.
Which, by the way, can we illustrate that? I think during that time he was growing up, there was like only one guard.
Yeah.
You had a 50-50 chance.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, he probably wouldn't kill you because he needed someone to keep turning that thing.
Right. We need to get whatever we're digging for, so please don't stop. I need you to go back.
So that's one particular scene. The other scene is the follow-up where he ends up being taken in. And we talked about this before recording, too, about it has a little bit prior to the movie Gladiator, where, like, this movie does this whole, like, he was a slave, and he ends up being, like, a fighter on an underground fighting thing, minus, of course, in Gladiator was little coliseums per se, but here he ended up doing like all these little fights. I wanted to ask you, was those underground fights satisfying you at all? Because when I look at it, I got where they're coming from, but then when they started doing the montage, it was kind of like, I almost feel like, what was the point of this? Like, we could have cut this out and just have them move on, but I wonder if you can kind of tell me, do you think it was necessary to show this? Because, I guess the movie, this is trying to show that he fought for, this is, okay, you know what? I'm wrong. Only reason why I'm wrong is because it did answer some little things about some of the things I always wonder, like him growing up. Like, did he know how to talk? You know, I guess that worked in that aspect of it. And then that led him to his freedom. But other than that, I don't know. I feel like the way they structured that, it almost felt like a waste of time, but I get what they were trying to do there for. Maybe there would have been a different way he could have learned all that. I don't know. What's your point of view of that?
So it kind of feels like I wish they would have done the montage of obviously of him growing up, but then if they were doing the fight scenes, I think that would have been interesting if they did it more like and granted this movie's more now, but it's not Hateful Eight. It's a Quentin Tarantino movie, the one with Jamie Foxx.
Oh, Django.
I feel like it was kind of like that, if I'm not mistaken, right? Where someone bought the slave, then taught him like everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how I feel, right? Like they bought this dude, like maybe he bought him as a slave. And granted, yes, the comic books and stuff like that will probably tell us the origin story, and we just don't know. But maybe he was bought as a slave, and then this guy knew that this guy is kind of like big and buff and could be a fighter, and then help train him to be a dominant figure, you know? Mm-hmm. Kind of like how Django, you know, grew into be a very smart slave who could gunsling and whatever else. So I wonder if it was kind of like that same concept. And I wonder if Quentin Tarantino might have taken that kind of like that thought process and pushed it on. But it just wasn't portrayed to us as clearly, I guess. Mm-hmm. But I mean, this movie is a pretty low budget.
Right. And I guess like that also took away, compared to Django, the bond. Yes. Because maybe they would have been nice to have a bond between him and the owner.
Yeah.
Instead of just showing us all those fight stuff. But I guess to the original point, I get it, but maybe it could have been done better.
I do.
Yeah.
I do agree. As far as like the fighting and stuff like that, I mean, it's hard, right? Because we can look at it in like 2023, 2024 lenses and be like, oh, there's so many more ways to do fight scenes that would just be more applicable, right? Even like within Rocky, like montages were just like much better. Mm-hmm. So I think it would have been better if they would have done like a couple fight montages, but more of like how he became, who was comfortable, then a little bit more struggle, I think, for him in those fights. Mm-hmm. To show that maybe he didn't start off being as BA as he is. Mm-hmm. I mean, he wasn't like super BA. He didn't dominate everyone like the Hulk did to like Loki or anything like that. But right. Still, I kind of wish there was a little bit of a progression of like some struggle and then this, instead of just like, hey, I was a slave, now I'm a big barbarian. So going into, I would say, now we know his revenge and basically why he wants to go after Thorn. Or not Thorn, but go after Doom, and kind of how he developed into this warrior, this barbarian. But going into the next act, where his journey, his quest to get revenge for what Doom has done to his mom. Which, by the way, going back to that real quick, that was pretty cold. Like, if you were a little kid and you were holding your mom's hand and like, her head just fell off, dude.
Yeah, he was really trying to like register it. He was like,
dude, I don't think if that happened to my mom and I was like that, I don't think I'd have like the fortitude to live. So starting off Act 2, which, you know, up for interpretation, but I put it was kind of like the scene where to start his journey, he had to go talk to the witch. Mm-hmm. To talk to the witch to find out more about Doom, which was an interesting scene to me. Because, I thought Baldur's Gate 3 was being really liberal with sex scenes and sex and just dating and wanting to be companions, but come to realize, no, they're not. Much easier than we thought it was. So kudos to you, Larian Studios. Kudos to you, Larian Studios, for staying true and kind of reserving yourself just a tad. It is kind of the start of like the talk of Crom, which I know you wanted to talk about, and also kind of like the first introduction to, I mean, other than what we talked about the Doom charm, but the first introduction to kind of like just a more mythical version of this movie.
Yes, because like Vikings in general, which is kind of like we talked before. I mean, not even them. The gods gets mentioned a lot in this film overall, but Chrome is one of the main ones for Conan and his tribe. Chrome is the one that's supposed to be keeping an eye on them, connected to Valhalla, right? it's supposed to be this whole, if I'm wrong, please correct me on down below or now correct me. But, the whole story of if you die, you're supposed to die as like a strong warrior. So the Valkyries can take you up to Valhalla where, the whole eating, fighting forever until whatever. I think that's what Conan's motivation was of the belief in Chrome in his way was strong warrior all the way, or Chrome doesn't like look at you, I guess. Maybe do you see something different the way Chrome is being prayed or prayered?
Well, I think in my weird look at it too is just like, where did that come from? It's kind of my ordeal, right? Because it did kind of shock me when he talked about it. And I actually had to look it up and like understand what he was saying because she flew off into like wherever, right? And then he just like Crom, and I was like, what? Where did that come from? Why is that even a thing? And maybe I just missed it earlier that he believed in or he prayed in. I didn't feel like I guess it was from his master slaver person who was teaching him like the strong get talked to, the strong get looked at, the strong get.
You might be right because we forget that he studied a lot of this stuff in his cage during one of his break times because that was also the scene where they offered a woman to him and all this stuff.
Oh, yeah, I did
so that could be the time where he discovered, and like you said, that's got part of his training, which now that kind of answers a little bit more of why the gladiator era for him makes a little more sense because now we're seeing him develop as a character himself now, believing Chrome, being a strong person, hoping that Chrome will be with him on this voyage for revenge for his to avenge his family and whatnot. So,
which is weird. I know this is kind of early, but do you think he's in a sense more religious or just spiritual? Because
spiritual, in my opinion,
he's just more spiritual. I feel the same way because it does feel that he's just in some ways where he's just like, hey, Crom, pay attention to me whenever he wants to have it happen. Which, I mean, don't get me wrong, that's kind of how, that at times is kind of how the world works right now, whatever you believe in. But
it is interesting, right? Because it's one of those things where, like, some people where, like, I want to believe it. I don't, it's tough for him. I'll put in for this movie for a sake. I think Conan want to believe in Chrome when is necessary, but doesn't want to discard Chrome because of he might get punished at the same time, right? He's like, I want to believe in you, but at the same time, if I don't hear from you, then I curse you.
Yeah.
So it's almost like he's always going to ask for Chrome for help, but he's not going to he's thinking like, she's not going to come, but I'll do it for the hell of it. Because we see that through the whole thing. So I think it's spiritual. So no one else talks about Chrome except him.
Yeah, that's true. But there is somebody else that talks about the four winds. And he is my monk, the one that I respect and change names to all the time. So I don't know a specific name for him. Oh, I mean, but there's another character. Actually, it's weird. It's a combination of your character and my character because I'm the monk and you are the archer / thief in our Baldur's Gate 3 game. You should change your name to Sobotai.
Sobotai, yeah.
Sobotai. But let's talk about some of the companions, man. Sobotai, Valeria, and the Zer.
So I think we should go in order. Let's talk about Sobotai first because he's the first person that was right outside the tent when Conan came out after the witch situation, right?
The witch and
and this is kind of the beginning per se of the whole, of unfinished stuff because if you remember prior to that. When Conan discovered the sword that kind of helped him also pursue his journey, he was being chased by dogs because, he got set free. That never got a conclusion of it. But we'll continue as we go on. But Sobotai is a character to me. He's just there. He didn't really do anything to stand out too much. I mean, the only thing I think he stood out about him is he shoots arrows. He didn't do anything else to make him stand out. Is he funny? Is he clever? No. Like, is he like the mastermind of everything? No. He's just like an archer. He was just there for the ride. Yes, he had one moment about talking about gods with Conan, but after that, I would say he was probably, honestly, Nam, he was probably maybe 60% in this film. Like, his big moments was towards the end, but in this moment here, he was just there. He didn't really do anything to make himself stand out to me. What about you?
I mean, I think he's the token friend, right? He's like Conan's like only friend. Like so
far, yeah.
Truly. The movie he became his friend, and I think that it's like, oh yeah, we got to have a friend. We have to have a token friend, somebody that'll kind of help watch his back or do things that he can't do. So I see it more in that line. I get where you're coming from, though. I don't necessarily feel that he did all that much. It's just like Conan took the which we'll talk about here. Conan took the little gem or whatever he took and gave it to basically just handed it over to him. It's just like, I thought you were the thief, Subotai. Shouldn't you be the one doing this?
Yeah, right? Yeah.
And Subotai, why you gonna sit there and watch me when I'm fighting a snake, man? It was just kind of like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna do that? But I mean, he did kind of help out, sorta, towards the end of the movie. But
was it the part where those two were running away at the last moment, leaving what's her face behind? And like, dude, you're an archer. You're supposed to watch everybody's back. She ended up kicking 4 people's asses. Like, you could have helped her out with 2 of those off.
I know, right?
We'll talk about when we talk about that scene. But there's like I get to the point of the companion because Conan is such a serious person. You need someone to bounce off with, which is fine, but I don't think he accomplished that. But I just didn't think he did enough for me to really care about him, other than like, you're here for him, but like, you're not doing anything for me to care about you, though. And I think that was very disappointing. I think he could have been developed a little bit better for the time that he had in there, but this is better than nothing, I guess, for this. So.
I do think that Subotai could have been the character where they had more of like the buddy, like, becoming friends and kind of developing that relationship. But I do feel that in this movie, relationship building was not exactly, at least to me, didn't hit.
Across the board, you mean?
Yeah, across the board.
Yeah.
Across the board, it didn't hit. I mean, the whole mom getting her head cut off, like that's just devastating. Like, you can just put yourself in that position and just understand that's like horrible. But anything else, you're just not 100% sure. It was just kind of like they come in, they meet, then they get in bed. As we talk about Valeria, who was his love interest and also kind of like the skilled warrior, his other half, like she's the fighter of the group. How did you feel about her?
I actually enjoyed her. I think she did a lot more work. And I think maybe that's why Subotai kind of took the back seat when she started coming in, because when she started coming in the picture, we saw less of Subotai as we went. But I did like her character. I think there are certain scenes I question why and what was the point of her situation. For instance, when it was time for the Snake Tower, which that was a very interesting scene. As they mentioned, and quote me if I'm wrong here, I think they said there was other snake towers around the world or something like that. Maybe that's the only one. But anyways, when it was time to infiltrate that, it was interesting they were going down there to steal the jewel, and it ended up being Subotai and Conan fighting all this while she was spying on the king or the leader. Like, she didn't do no distractions or anything. She was just kind of just there. And there's a lot of whys with her. Like, why were you doing this while they're doing that? Like, I feel like you could have gone down there and stole it too. They were so high up they didn't pay attention. Why are you so obsessed with all the jewelry, but you're not, like, what are you doing with it? Why is it that you want to be there for him but then don't want to be there for him? There was just a lot of whys with her. But when it came she was awesome in the clutch. When it came to the part when she came in kicking ass, I liked it. It was enjoyable. She did a good job for that.
I do agree with that. I do feel that whenever it came time where she had to just like show like what she was made out of, she was BA about it. But I do feel that like the relationship between her and like Conan, I was just kind of like, yeah, that was just there. I was like, is it because you guys are 2 skilled warriors and you guys are like loners that you just kind of like, let's just get together? Like, that's how I honestly felt about it. Because, I mean, at least in Baldur's Gate, you had to develop relationships and like learn about each other's backstories. And, all right, let me rephrase that. I didn't think she was a great character. I thought she was a good character, a good companion. Because I think there's always going to be that love interest that is someone that will impress the main protagonist, right? To show them that she is just about as much their equal. But once we get into talking a little bit more about Act 3, I do think the whole relationship building aspect of it was a big miss to me. That did kind of miss in Act 3.
There's one scene, I get what they were going for, but I felt I would argue it was unnecessary for the goal of the film, and that is being arrested per se by the king, which I don't know where they're at this point, like what town or whatever, but apparently that town had a kingdom. And I always thought the guards were from from the leader of the snake tower. Totally thought that was that. Didn't know there was a king in this. It was either help the king out or die scene where he, hey, I need you to go save my daughter. She is now a slave and a wife to Doom. And, if you do that, I'll give you all the jewels I get. Now, I get that. But what I don't get is what this had to do with Conan's goal of going after Doom regardless. Like I don't understand why that scene needed to be there, because they could have just cut that and go straight to that and kept going. It did nothing for the film for me personally, other than like just added on weight of a motivation for who? I guess maybe the thieves, I guess, in that way. But
to get
regardless,
have more reason to do it, maybe.
Yeah. I guess for me, when I looked at it, like Conan's going after Doom regardless of the situation was. This was just a fun time with the group and everything. But other than that, his motivation was still going after Doom. So this king thing felt like a side quest that I didn't want to accept.
It's one of the ones that, to me, what it is it's one of those side quests that sits on the maps or in the journal, and you just keep looking at it, and at some point down the line, you're just like, fine, I just want to clear my stupid journal, and then just get rid of it. Yeah, so no, I agree. It is kind of a random side quest, but I mean, I think you kind of did touch on the point where it might have been more for the thieves than it really was anything else. I'm not gonna lie when I say this. I didn't know that there was another king, and honestly, when we get to Act 3, the whole princess thing, like there was a scene there that I was just like, where the hell did that come from? I might have looked at my phone during that time or something. I'm not 100%. Doesn't make for a good podcast. I'm sorry, guys. But then there was there's the big snake fight, right? Because then we have to talk about the snake fight, the anaconda fight, or I guess it's the anaconda, but the big snake fight. Mm-hmm. It made me think about fighting the snake in Resident Evil with a knife. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like that was that kind of fight, right? Because the archer just kind of sat there and was just like. It's like, where do I need to shoot him? It's like, dude, you got like 50 feet of everything else to shoot him.
Right. And you have like tons of arrows. Pick a spot and just keep going.
Just keep shooting the thing.
Yeah. I think what was disappointing about that fight in particularly, in my opinion, is the fact that I wanted more from the snake more than anything. It felt like a lot of cuts of Conan being wrapped around the snake, but not so much of the snake in action. I get it. This movie's a 20-minute budget. 20 million budget. So I get that 100%. But I guess what upset me was I wish more money went into trying to make this snake, because this is the only snake literally in this film that we get. Like, you don't get any other bigger snakes.
Sort of.
And I just felt like, sort of. But we never got like a big snake fight from a snake cult.
Yeah.
It's a snake cult. I wanted to see how they're going to pull off a practical big ass snake. That would have been awesome. But it just didn't get what I want out of it, I guess. But that chopping the head off was mighty nice, I will say. That blood everywhere, I was like, all right. That was cool. So
you figure it would be like a Clash of the Titans thing where they would have claymation or something like that going on with the snake fight.
Yes.
Or something.
Yes.
I feel that would have been a little bit more fitting. But 20 million budget, I don't know how that works. So I don't even have $20 to my name, and then that's 20 million. I can't even, Jeremy. I can't even. But that fight was definitely kind of interesting. I did find it kind of funny, just kind of watching Sobotai. I'm just like, dude, bro, you gonna do something? Like, I mean,
he bounced quick.
Like, you could at least kick the snake on like the backside. Like, it wasn't gonna do anything to you. You see how fast that thing was moving? It wasn't going anywhere.
I feel sorry for the girl that had to sacrifice herself, because she's basically just concrete, right? It's like, would you rather be killed by the snake or just disappoint the snake's already dead and now your face is smashed to the ground?
She did that McDuck dive and found out that you can't just swim in gold.
Mm-hmm. And then the fact that the jewel never really specified what was so special about it. Like, if you have a giant snake guarding against this jewel and we're in a world of what's kind of magic, like, you would think that jewel would mean something.
Yeah, no, man. It was one of the jewels from the Avengers glove.
I wonder which one is it.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's probably the one where you have to, at the end where they spoiler alert, guys, where they killed Black Widow to get to get that one gem.
Yeah.
We don't really know it because we're like all Marveled out, but like we weren't like that much into Marvel. I was a Batman person, all right? Get over it.
Judge all you want. Okay, so yeah, that's probably why that's two disappointing things, right? The snake, and then the fact that the only thing that Jewel did was get sex. That was awkward with no dialogue. It just like next scene.
Yeah. So Doom has a show of power and captures Conan just like randomly, and them like sitting in the little temple thing, and of course Conan bites the bullet. He bites the bullet. Now, my question is, do you think they had to pay 200 gold to resurrect Conan?
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, in this one, you can't really steal the gold back because, like, literally, you just got nothing but like Ghost. I mean, Ghost from like the movie Ghost, just swarming all around. But I thought that was kind of a unique. I liked it. I actually liked that scene in a way. I like the effects where they had the hand drawn like effects going in and around it. And I don't know for a fact where I've seen that done before, but it does kind of fit that comic booky feel in my world, in my opinion.
It could work, say, kind of more of the horror movies where you're dealing with demonic things and you can get those spirit hands coming out of the ground trying to pull them down and stuff like that. I remember a lot of like Japanese mythology does that with the whole like demons with the chain all around you trying to drag you down. That particular scene too, I like that a lot too, because we kind of got a taste of another thing about magic in this world, right? Of how you could bring someone back to life in a sort of way. I would have been more interested if there was a consequence to bring somebody back to life, because I feel like there was no consequence other than like one god owes me a favor. You mentioned that because like they were talking about like the wizard saying like, yeah, I have one favor. I guess he gets to use his one reviving scroll to bring this person back, all tattoo on his face. So I did like the special effects. I thought it was really cool, and maybe that's where all the money went, to the special effects. Can we rewind back to the snake cult itself?
Okay.
Because I think when it was time to arrive there, that was an awesome just shot of just seeing everything.
That's
Just
right.
all the worship people, all the sky, all that stuff. Because I am a fan of learning about stories about these societies among themselves and their beliefs and everything. And the snake cult, which, by the way, kind of wish we got a little bit more lore of what the snake cult was learning. Like what are they getting out of this? Like if they die, the snake god's supposed to take them. I think that's one of the biggest disappointment in this movie. We had Doom trying to make this paradise for everybody, but we never really got an idea of what it is itself. And so I was a little disappointed about it. But the atmosphere so was really cool. And I like the fact that we got to see Conan infiltrate a little bit to give us the thing. And then we get, he messed up by asking too many questions. And then we get the torture scene. I want to talk about this scene particularly because I think this is the most Doom moment out of all the scenes. Because we talked about this is the most dialogue he got. This is the most time of we get to see what kind of monster he is. My question for you is, did this scene pay off to you particularly of, am I going to like Doom? Do I think Doom is a great bad guy? What is your point of view of that?
I think for a good part of the second act, and actually for the good part of the first act, right? Like we really didn't know enough about Doom other than he cut the wife's head off, or like the girl's head off. And I feel like there needs to be a consistency in movies, because I do feel that in movies in general, like if you really want to root for the hero, then you need a villain that you want to like despise against. But if I only see the villain for one scene, then I'm not really going to care. So I do like the fact that it does show that he's smarter and a little bit more powerful than you would think, at least up to this point, because I was wanting more Doom when we were getting to this point in the movie, when I was like, I would like to see him do more and show more power, and then have what I thought would have been an epic kind of ending for this, because I want to feel that way. Like that's how you want to feel, like in a person's journey. You want to root for the good guy because there's really a rhyme and a reason, and then you want to see the struggles of him getting there. Not necessarily like easy struggles, just the struggles in the journey of him getting there. And that was kind of the deal. I was like, so now Doom is aware that this person's coming for him. So what are you going to do? I think that was kind of the big thing, because before he wasn't aware that this guy was coming. I mean, he was just like, M. Bison in Street Fighter. He was just like, the day I graced your life, to me, it was a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And, and to Conan, it's the world. So it was a good kind of like filler in the middle where it was just like, okay, now Doom, that this dude is after you, even though you kind of just like ended him. But still,
Yeah, I really like that scene because certain key things that he did in that scene, for instance, like he tried, for one, I like the fact that he evolved to the point where like he is not really the ruthless person that you thought he was. He said back in the day, you know,
Yeah.
it was all about the steel.
That's
But
right.
now-
I did say that.
But now the power is words, which is cool. I like that. I like the fact that like I can manipulate people to get to do the things I want. Like that's cool. I'm down with that. Especially he told one of his followers to basically kill herself right in front of him. She's like, "You child, come to me." Just falls flat, dies. I thought like that's awesome. Like fucked up, messed up,
Yes.
but awesome. Like okay, this is what I'm talking about. Like he's using that power, that mindset for it. And the fact that, and I kind of think low key he respected Conan in a way. He's like, I respect you that you came to get revenge because I want revenge of what you did to me. So instead of killing you, we equaled out. I'm going to crucify you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to kill you like straight up. I'm going to let you die on this thing. I thought that was, right there was more like, okay, I hope he lives up to what he's doing now.
Yeah.
You know. And so I really like that particular scene. I think that was a great role for Doom because, like we talked before, Earl Jones, when he talks, you better listen.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Most definitely. That was the scene that he got paid for.
Yeah. I bet that was like the first thing he did in the film.
That was the scene that he got paid for. If you were going to hire your James Earl Jones as the villain of your movie, that he was paid for. Like, that was the scene you paid for. Because it wasn't every other scene that you paid for at all. Which, I mean, kind of goes into Act 3. You know, at this point in time, I was asking, it's like, how much do you think James Earl Jones got paid by the scene? Because he really did not, like, his presence wasn't as known. Now, every time his presence was there, it meant something, you know? Which is probably a good thing for the movie. However, now we're going to go to Act 3, and we find out that James Earl Jones is a druid. But is there something that you want to talk about before we get to just that particular scene?
Yeah. So when it was time I want to talk about, did we like the mission they were on leading to that, right? The makeup, infiltrating. Was that worth the hype of, okay, we're all in this together, all three of us, we're going in, we're going to get him and go get the princess and get out. Right? Was that scene exciting for you? I thought it was really cool of them going in, sneaking, because one of the things I like about films is if you're going to build this world, give me a tour of it. And I thought that was really cool if we kind of got a tour of a little bit of like what goes on in the factory per se. So I thought that was really, really cool to put that up. And I love the way they put the makeup on and everything, getting ready for this. I was like, man, where's that makeup before? Like Conan looked badass with that makeup, man. Like that should have been on a long time ago. It reminds me of Commando. Like, yeah. It reminds me of him like Commando in that movie, man. So, especially when it was time to infiltrate, you know, the orgy with the soup, I guess, gets you more great. I don't know. What do you call that soup now? What is that? What is that soup?
Was it paradise or is it paradise? It was
paradise.
Paradise.
Hey, that was Sobotai said. He said paradise. So, you know, women everywhere, everybody masked up, very dominatrix stuff, you know, whatever.
Dude, if you hit this, you're gonna be deaf.
No, but what did you think of that building up to? Like...
I like the fact that they would. Now the mission itself, I'm not a big fan of. Like
you were not a big fan of the mission, okay?
The mission itself, like the idea of like infiltrating and like to me it was very simple. Like he's infiltrating to like he should have just infiltrated to like get revenge and like kill everybody and like go John Wick on everybody.
Oh, no, it's not. Forget about the princess thing. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean by that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like the thing is, this is like, oh, we found out where everything's at, so this is like the final countdown, the final battle, right? And so that's kind of how I felt like that really should have been played out more. Where it's just like, well, let's just put on the war makeup. We're about to like have at it because. I feel that this could have truly just ended the movie for me if they wanted to just go through the fighting, sneak around, and then deal with like the levels of the issues and problems and the people that they had to fight, and then they lose a comrade or whatever. Like this truly could have just been the end of the movie for me if they would have just finished it.
I agree because I would have took the tour of how big this palace is as they work their way up like level 1 to level 10, whatever they want to do with it, instead of the last stand in the middle of nowhere with all these traps that are trying to set up with the princess using as bait. That was not working for me for this particular film. It got a little bit Mad Max right there.
Yeah.
I really wanted what you wanted. Like, go in the tower, get in, whoever makes it out, great. You know, that would have been so much better to me.
Yeah, because I do feel that, you know, Doom could have killed Valeria in the actual tower, and then you could have, like, seen, like, you know, Conan go into, like, rage mode, right? And just start, like, because, you know, his comrade has fallen, his current love interest has fallen. Real quick, like, she did talk about the resurrection piece of it, where she was going to pay a price if they brought him back, so...
Oh, that's right.
Because she does say that right before she dies while throwing 200 coin. Or maybe it was that she didn't have the 200 coin and she had to pay with her life.
Okay. You're right. Because the reason why your idea makes perfect sense is because the particular scene is probably the most disappointing scene in the whole movie. It was a waste of time. It never got brought up again or whatever. And it was when we saw Doom turn to a snake.
He's a druid, guys.
Yeah, he turned to a snake just to show us that he's this monster. But further away, then after that, nothing else other than snake arrows. You know?
Well, you were the one that wanted snake-themed things. Don't complain about shit when they start doing it, Jeremy. 2 snake arrows!
First one was cool. The second one was like, we get it. You know, it did not make up for him not turning into a snake. I just wonder, like, I wonder if there was like an uncut version of like, there was something they were going to do with this snake idea, and it just they ran out of money or something, and they had to do something else, because that would have been just so awesome, epic at the end of him fighting Doom as this snake or whatever imagination they had. Either the girl was going to die or the archer was going to die or whatever was going to happen. This would have been an awesome showdown, but instead we get 2 snake to the knees and a final chip off the tower when Conan ended Doom, and that was where he tried to do the same thing that he did to his mother. And I'm like, yeah, you could look in his eyes that we're out of money.
Yeah. You're my son. You are my son. It's like, bro. I was like, the whole Vader, you know, Luke, I am your father thing doesn't work on this one.
Mm-hmm.
He already watched the movie. He saw it. He knows that trick can't work. Yeah, I do feel that it was kind of the final scenes were kind of a letdown. Though I will say that, you know, Valeria dies, and then Subotai cries for Conan.
Okay, he should have done it earlier, but that's that one moment. He said he can't cry, so I'll cry for him. I'm like, okay, that's a deep G shit right there.
Yeah.
Like, good for him. That's some real stuff right there. I like that. I
It's
like
his
that.
homie.
Where was more of that earlier?
The budget wasn't there, Jeremy. I need you to get way off my back on that one.
I'm very limited on words I can say.
There you go. It's like that Eddie Murphy movie. We only have 150 words or whatever.
But you would think, due to the sacrifice of her for him, only to come back to be Chrome in a weird way when it came for the last stand fight where he saved him for that split moment, which we got to talk about the last tower fight. Since we didn't get the one we want, we got this one, this last stand using the princess, which, like we said, the princess is kind of pointed. Regardless of that, did you like the idea that they have for that final stand? I did not like it. And for my reason alone is 2 people taking out those guys was kind of too silly in a way to me, because I didn't believe that these 2 were that badass to take down all of them in that scenario.
Well, because there was nothing that would have proven that Subotai was any good or that good. Or that clever, I guess that would be the case. I mean, there were some things about those scenes that I was fine with. Like, I do feel that them killing Thorgrim with the fake out and the trap, that was a good one. Because Thorgrim was one of those guys that I think they did make to be a very, like, juggernaut kind of guy.
Hence the beginning of in the Paradise Room where, you know, he was tearing shop with that hammer.
So, yeah, they did make him a formidable, like, big, like, Herculean, like, fight. So, I mean, not that it was a fight, but that Conan needed to outsmart him, not necessarily just, like, you know, kill him off bat. I do find it kind of disappointing. A lot of the parts was because I don't think some of the traps that they had set up really worked. And I know that was probably more of a practical effects thing that they were having that they couldn't just necessarily do, because I mean obviously you set up spikes and stuff like that to kind of help with the horses and everything that are trying to come in, so that the horses get killed and whatnot. But also, like, you know, the fighters who fall onto them, like, you know, getting killed with the bamboo sticks. I do like the fact that there was some clever things that they did in that scene alone that I enjoyed. Like, they left weapons everywhere, so like he could just pick up one weapon or another weapon just as he's going through and fighting, and that could have been just because there was drops. But I was just thinking to myself, why don't we do that in Baldur's Gate 3? Why doesn't Karlach do that, Jeremy? Why doesn't Karlach do that?
I have too many weapons. I should be doing that. I should be dropping them everywhere like breadcrumbs.
I mean, typically, right, Jeremy? I mean, think about this. It is Karlach and you in this scene. It is the archer and the barbarian. It is you just admitted to me in the world that you can't clear everybody else out because it's not believable. So you need the monk and you need the sorcerers.
The sorcerers, yep. Not wrong whatsoever. I think my only defense is Garlic's not human. That's all I got for defense on that. Yeah.
And I will say that the Rexer scene, I don't understand that one. Like, he ran in like Lancelot without actually like having a Lancelot ending. Like, he gets up, like, you're just watching him. He gets up and he just starts running like a mile away, and you're just like, is he really doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And he really did, and he met his end.
Yeah.
But no, I wish they would have just kind of put it all together instead of having it just the one big, or the two separate scenes, right? I don't need that much of a breather between Valeria's death to know that it should mean something to Conan. And I think they were just doing that so Subotai can have a G scene by saying, I cried for him. But then, you know, we don't get the druid turn, like the druid turn for him, for what's his name, to become a snake, right? Like, it doesn't happen. I don't know. Actually, Jeremy, what would be more satisfying to you if James Earl Jones turned into the snake and fought? Would it be Mortal Kombat 2 or the Scorpion, or the Mummy 2, the Scorpion King? Like, that's how I feel is going to turn out. So you have to choose one or the other.
I'll probably go with the Scorpion King, I guess. Yeah.
At least the Scorpion King did something, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, there made no sense, like, because like it's nice that, you know, Doom could turn into a snake and slither away, hence the snake cult. But like, would it not have been faster for him just to sneak out of the way? Because that snake took a long time to slither away.
It did. And I think what also was kind of disappointing about Doom himself overall, or actually just the snake cult itself, is you did see snakes, but I would thought snakes would be way more involved in a different way, not just kind of like there. Hence, like the snake tower, you had the big snake arrows. Like, you would think they would be more useful for the idea of snakes. Like, you know, hey, Venom, do you guys make something, make Venom arrows, Venom something, you know? Like, I wish there was more usefulness of snakes. I mean, even the Paradise Room, like, there wasn't really any snakes in there. Like I needed to feel that snakes were deadly in that way. And then you have Doom in there. It would have been awesome if it was just a room full of snakes and it's Conan versus Doom. I don't know. I'm just throwing up crazy ideas here. But my crazy idea is way better than the idea they were coming up with.
Yeah, like, bite into the campiness of the whole ordeal, right? I do agree, because, I mean, you already have a snake on Viagra. Like, you being used as an arrow, you might as well just, like, bite into the whole snake ordeal. Like, the venom, the potions, the poisons. I think that could have been more beneficial. Then also, I do think that, you know, it would be interesting to, like, you know, have traps and stuff like that involve like snakes, or being able to send like a scout snake or something like that.
Should feel like Indiana Jones when I walk in there.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking, right? Is the Indiana Jones did it really well. So
yeah.
But Doom's death is disappointing.
Oh yeah, I think that was the worst payoff. It did not pay
that
off.
was the worst, right? It's like, so the build up from Act 1 to Act 2 for Doom's character was like this high arc. And I think once we got to like the third act, it took a sharp crash. Because I don't necessarily need Doom to turn into a snake, but Doom could have easily commanded like his people to do more, to throw snakes at people. I don't care. I don't know, whatever. But for him to just kind of die at the end, and just because he was just like, you are my son. And you were wrong, his head cut off and Conan holding it up. to show everybody was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like what happens whenever Karlach's head's held up there. Just
I think you had a point where the less you see him use that time better. Like if you're going to show less of Doom in this whole movie, then there are always going to be this anticipated moment of when he comes back in, like, oh, it's going to get nuts.
Yeah.
Every single time, especially after the part we talk about is the most iconic part for him. After that, it should have been going higher, but we just didn't get that, you know. And I think that's what the most disappointing part about it. And I'm fine with sparse villains as long as they make up for those moments that they did, compared to a guy hanging around all the time and he's just not doing anything.
Yeah.
So I get what they were trying to do with the movie. It's always going to be a thing in the back of my head of the money ran out for this ending.
I feel I do have the side like the generals, like all the other generals, be more prevalent in what they're doing. I think
especially I would argue that for being a snake cult, they would have some kind of also snake abilities in their certain way. Someone, like we were talking about, someone could have the power of, I don't know, being ridiculous, spit acid. You know, not to be redundant here, but I guess I'm just now thinking ahead, like there was so much potential there for this snake cult idea that I wish they, like you said before, lead into the campiness and just have fun with it.
Yeah, which makes me go back to Flash Gordon and probably give a better grade than what we gave it, because at least they did it. You know, they leaned into it, so I'll give them that. 1982 movie, Jeremy, mixed reviews all the way across the board from Rotten Tomatoes, just in general, but for you, going back to a movie that was made before you were born, you know, and looking back at it and understanding that it's budgetary issues, not issues, but just like its restraints, I guess, and putting yourself back in 1982, what do you think about this movie?
Oh, regardless of all these feelings, the pace was still fine. I enjoy, don't get me wrong. Like I kind of looked away a couple times from my phone or looking up information about the film just to learn a little bit more about it. But overall, I thought the pacing was fine. It goes quickly, and because of going quickly, it sacrificed. I know it was 2 hours. It doesn't feel like 2 hours because how fast they were going. But for 2 hours they were going past, they definitely skipped over a lot of the stuff that I did want to know about due to really just trying to get Conan there to the revenge part. But it was entertaining regardless. There was some entertaining part. I had fun with the movie itself. But it's always, for that time, I think they did very well for a 1982 film. Definitely. And I think I would argue this movie did influence a lot of other films to lean into their campiness. Say, Big Trouble in Little China. Like I think Conan's the one that kind of started those comic books of like, you can do these awesome warrior movies on a good budget, and also they don't have to be costumes. So I still recommend it. I still enjoy it for what it is. So
I got you. No, I'm with you too. I think it is a definition of a popcorn flick to me. Definitely a popcorn flick, just a movie that fits the Arnold Schwarzenegger mold, right? I really feel that, for his first movie, it makes sense. Like for him to play this big bulky dude who does like very little lines and does a lot of fighting. So yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a popcorn flick, guys. It's something that you should just watch and enjoy and just allow yourself to just be mindless about it. I know we kind of picked on some things, but I do feel that, it is a good conversation topic for some of the things that we had to talk about. And, just like any movie, and I think Jeremy will agree, the thing is that, we want to enjoy the journey, but sometimes like the suspension of disbelief can go away if there's a lot of missing things or if something just starts nagging at you.
We're the In-Game Boss program channel, variety of video games. Yeah, variety of other shows, video games, movies. And of course, as you know, you're listening to this and you have any thoughts, opinions, or anything, please leave a comment down below. We would love to hear your thoughts. Did you like Conan? Did you not like Conan? The sequel, Conan the Destroyer, makes up for the first one in your mind. Are you just a Conan fan in general? Tell us if the comic books are worth it. Is the cartoon worth it? Is the video game that came out like a couple of years ago worth